Evet, takipçilerimizi bekliyoruz. We're waiting our followers to come. Welcome to TUED Talks. One more TUED Talk. We'll be together today. So I'm waiting the followers. Takipçilerimizi bekliyorum. Birazdan çok güzel bir söyleşi olacak. Çok önemli bir konuğumuz var. Yine Dünya Etkinlik Endüstrisinden. Çok da güzel bir söyleşi yapacağız ama tabii birazcık daha katılımcılarımızın artmasını bekliyorum. Hi James, just wait. Today we have a very special guest from global event industry, Dr. James Morgan. As you know, we are hosting very special guests from the global event industry in each TUED talk. And today we have a very special guest from London, UK again. And Dr. James Morgan will be with us in a few minutes. Let me introduce him to you. He is the founder of Event Tech Lab, a partnership community for event technology startups, developers and investors. He is also a senior lecturer in events at the University of Westminster in London. So we'll be connecting him in few minutes. Evet, birazdan değerli konuğumuzla beraber olacağız. Bağlanalım. Yeah. Güzel bir söyleşi yapacağız inşallah. Şimdi bağlanmayı bekliyorum. Hi, Dr. James Morgan.
Hi, Melton. How are you?
I'm very fine. And you? How is London?
Very good, thank you. A little bit warm today.
Oh, so did summer arrive there?
Yes, it has, thank you.
So we'll have a very lovely talk with you today about the event industry and what is the situation in Europe. We'll talk about it in London, in UK, and what's expecting us as a global event industry. I'm sure you will focus on very important points today with us. Thank you for joining our TUED talk. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So today let's start with, can you give us a brief summary about the current situation in London, in UK, about the event and meeting industry? How is it there?
So where we are at the moment is that the government hasn't decided when events will start. So we have a lot of the associations, what they are doing for business events is they are setting out the best way to handle live again. So we see the exhibition industry developing plans of the best practice for venues. We see the MICE sector looking at how they might design their meetings in future when it goes live again. Because if the industry has specific plans that they can present to the government, then it's kind of covering the groundwork for them to start back to live. What we also seeing is permission will be given probably in July for small weddings to take place. So these are not going to be very large weddings. They'll probably be maybe 10 to 20 people. So nothing to get excited about in budgets, but you know, the business is starting to come back again. So we are seeing planning. We've also seen a very large pivot from live to virtual events. So lots of companies in the UK and in Europe have readapted to the virtual event, just as we're doing right now.
I think yes.
in terms of technology, we're seeing a lot of different companies looking for new platforms to host virtual events. We're also seeing a lot of technology companies use particular services like Zoom or Whereby or GoToWebinar. And what they're doing is they're repackaging that into their own websites as well. So they're not developing new technology. They're literally plugging in that service into a website so they can run virtual events. But what we're also seeing is planning for hybrids, so we can discuss that later.
Sometimes I'm losing you for poor connection. I don't. Now I get you again. Okay, that's right. So also in Turkey, it's the same situation. You know, we are waiting for July for some small weddings and events to happen. We didn't have any permission yet for events to happen from our government. The same situation, just like in England. We are still waiting. And there are a lot of webinars and Zoom meetings going around, and a lot of live meetings as we are doing now. So these are a kind of events, but of course not in the expectation of having big budgets. The same problem. We are in the process of waiting and seeing what's gonna happen. So what are the expectations and the timeline in your, crystal ball, let's say?
Well, I think what we're gonna see probably is some smaller events starting in September. I don't think that we will see anything before that. I mean, first of all, let's split up the business events world and the personal, cultural, private events. In terms of business events, nothing normally happens over the summer in any case.
Yes.
So that will probably only really start again in September with very small mice gatherings. The exhibitions industry is talking about developing smaller exhibitions with less people, but also hybrid exhibitions. So we're talking about some live and some virtual engagement with that. So for example, a 2-day show would be socially distanced with less people, but then people can also attend content sessions, and they can look at booths in a virtual world as well. With private events, the government, as I say, they introducing smaller weddings in July, and then those will expand in the summer, but they will have to be outdoor events. Garden parties will also be possible in the summer, but again, it all has to be outdoors. So when weddings can come back, any indication? Meltem, I might lose you for a minute because my battery's about to die. I think this Instagram channel is using a lot of my energy. So can you talk for 1 minute and let me come back into the session? Is that okay?
Okay, so how you will, so you will have your battery, I guess, right?
Yes, so let me sign off and then I'll sign back in and request, okay?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I'll be talking.
Okay.
I'm waiting you.
Maybe you can ask if there's any questions from the audience so far.
Yes. They will have for sure questions for you.
Okay.
So I will be waiting for you here. Evet, birazcık connection problemimiz var. Dr. James Morgan birazcık bir süreliğine ayrıldı ama tekrar aramızda olacak. Lütfen kimse kaybolmasın. Aslında benim gördüğüm kadarıyla şöyle bir Türkçe özetleyecek olursak Londra ile hemen hemen aynı durumdayız. Temmuz'da çok küçük toplantıların başlamasını bekliyor. Eylül'de diyor bazı eventler başlayabilir ama bu eventler virtual'la live eventlerin karışımı gibi olacak. Yani çok az kişiyle olacak, gerçekleşecek gerçek anlamda. Ancak virtual olarak çok kişiler de virtual olarak katılabilecek bu eventlere diyor. Hemen hemen sanırsam biz de aynı durumdayız. Biz de hükümetimizden küçük toplantılara, en azından canlı toplantılara izin verilmesini bekliyoruz. Toparlanmaya çalışıyoruz. Yeni daha normalleşiyoruz. Evet, tekrar kabul edelim Dr. James Morgan'ı. Tekrar geri geldi. Evet. Bakalım. So,
Okay, I'm back.
that's great. You've been quick. Okay. So, what are the recovery plans for the event industry in UK? Are there any recovery plans?
The recovery plans, well, that's for the events industry. I think that the recovery plan is mostly about hybrid events or blended events. So that is element of live and virtual together. Because what we have to consider the client, and we have to consider the attendee organizations. So if you think about a wedding or a consumer exhibition like a comic show for younger people, those consumer type events are very much the choice of the attendee if they should attend or not. From the point of view of corporate events, if you're organizing an event for corporates, what you're relying on is you're relying on the policy, the internal policies within each company that is going to attend. So we know that each company will have a duty of care to their employees. And do they want to take the risk of sending somebody to an event and then they get ill? So that's the first consideration.
Yes.
The second consideration is, do the companies that we are inviting to attend and asking them to either buy a ticket, pay for accommodation, flights, what kind of financial state are these companies in after the huge lockdown, the cuts in productivity, the cuts in revenue, and in fact, quite a few companies might become insolvent and cease to have any kind of business. So it's quite a difficult environment. So there's two considerations there. There's the consumer event where it's a personal choice, and then there's the company event where it's down to the individual policies of each company attending. I think we have to look at it that way.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing here. We're looking at different ways. How will we convince consumers that the event is safe? So social distancing, all those kinds of things. The cleaning within a venue. How do they get to the venue? Do they have to go on busy public transport, or can they use off-peak times to travel to an event? So usually we start a MICE event at 9 a.m. in the morning with tea and coffee, and then we go into the program. So you may see some MICE events starting at 11 and maybe finishing at 3, so people are not having to use public transport. You know, these are all sorts of things that are being discussed right now, because the less risk, the more reassured the attendee will be to come along to the event. I think a lot of venues have got work to do in terms of their cleaning protocols. I mean, just a very basic consideration is a door handle. How many times is that door handle going to be touched in a day? How often is that door handle being used in a day? Do we make sure all the doors are open? Do we clean the door handle every single hour, every half hour? Then we've also got the technology. I mean, If any of your listeners are interested, I wrote an article for Exhibition News in the June issue about technology for convention centers and exhibition centers. So what we're recommending is using ultraviolet light to clean overnight when people aren't there. So you just put on ultraviolet lights. We're talking about wearable devices that go on your wrist. And if anybody comes too close, it buzzes, so people have to move away. There's lots of new types of technology out there to actually be used at events, corporate events or private events. So these are the kinds of things that are being discussed at the moment.
Wow, I see. Well, let me share one of my experiences. Today and yesterday, I went to the hotels for the first time. Yesterday, I was in Turan Campus Ski. You have been in Istanbul, you know there. Sorry, yesterday I was in Four Seasons Hotel on the Bosphorus, and today I was invited to Turan Kempinski Palace, and I have a lunch there. I had lunch there. Everything was so different, but you know, I felt safe in a way. It was not an event, but it was, you know, a lunch for the first time after 3 months. You know, and I felt safe. You know, there were a lot of changes. You know, first of all the people, waiters, they were with masks and gloves, and you know. The knife and forks, they were in napkins, but they were also in a special box. Even the pen that I had to sign was in a special, you know, coverage. So I think there are a lot of, you know, the hotels are working there, you know, I think their homeworks, let's say, and they are waiting for the events to start, of course. I've been discussing during the lunch what's going to happen about the event industry, of course, in Turkey. But I see that they are very keen on working to take the predictions about health and safety.
Yeah, I think it's the way people have to look at these kind of events or their hospitality services. It's about the low-touch economy. So the less things that you actually have to touch, for example, the better it is. So
Yeah.
menus, for example.
Yeah.
Did they give you a menu? Did it have a cover, or they ask you to look
No,
the menu up on a phone? Or
no, it was an application on my phone. So I was able to read it on my phone, the menu, and it was amazing. For the first time, this was in Kempinski. So nobody has touched the menu. I was able to choose it from my phone. So it was a beautiful experience for me, and I felt really safe, you know, and I enjoyed the Bosphorus. But of course, there were very few tables for now. I hope there will be more, but they told me that in Kempinski, last weekend, they have hosted 200 guests at the terrace part. So that's a good
wow.
number. I was hopeful to hear that, you know.
Well, we're not at the stage where Turkey is right now.
Yeah.
To host 200 guests would be illegal right now.
Ah.
So I think you guys are probably ahead of the curve on this
I
compared
think
to us.
the total number was 200 at the terrace for the whole day. I don't think they have hosted the 200 guests at the same time.
Okay, I understand now.
Because this is also not, you know, this is not available now. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, I know in Germany today that there's an event happening called Back to Live.
Yeah.
And it's organized by FAMAB, which is one of the associations in Germany. And they've invited 100 industry professionals to an event in Frankfurt. And they've laid it out to make a live example of how they might proceed in the future. So if anybody's interested, you can have a look at Back to Live. And you can see the examples about social distancing, and how they've organized the event. I think there's a live feed that's starting in the next hour, where you can get that as well.
Oh, that's great.
I'll try and share it later once we finish this call.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much. And how do you see the progression of international events and meetings? You know, for instance, I've been doing, you know, a lot of international weddings. I have a company in also Dubai, as you know, and I was flying there each month, meeting and I don't know when they will start again. How do you see it? I mean, will the international meetings come back, or do we still have a lot of time for that?
I think that you will start to see international events happening, but it depends on the country, the destination. So, for example, South Africa said they won't be accepting any international visitors until January 21. I know that Saudi is closed right now.
I lost you. Now you came.
I had a job in Saudi, and that has been cancelled because no international people are allowed in. I know that traveling to certain countries is not allowed. So I think for destination weddings, for example, your business, it's going to be quite tricky. It'll depend on where the bride wants to have the event, which country. Some countries are safer. For example, flying to New Zealand, they've got no coronavirus cases there. But then the New Zealand government might say, well, if you're coming for a country that has coronavirus, you can't come in.
Yes.
So, you know, these are the kind of considerations that we will have to think about. Realistically, if you're bringing attendees to a destination wedding from around the world, it's going to be a lot more complicated than bringing them from one particular country, you know, with the logistics, the different laws that have to be taken into account. It might be a nice idea for somebody to do a world map with all the access rules for travel. You know, we probably see somebody I'm sure will pick that up soon and create a good map for Europe, or at least for Europe, and maybe the Middle East. But I think in terms of your question, I would predict that the business is only really going to kick off again in March or April 2021, you know, in Europe. It might happen a little bit earlier in the southern hemisphere because the summer is November, December, January time. But I don't think for Europe and maybe Dubai and places like that, it won't happen until the kind of next wedding season in 21.
I see. So let's hope little things for 2021, huh?
Yeah,
We
but
lost
look,
2020.
Turkey can be a great wedding destination.
Well, there's a special question for you from one of our board members, Mustafa Devrim Yalçın. He asks, any foreign guest arriving to UK must be in quarantine for 14 days. Is this a polite way of saying, please do not come? What do you say about this?
I look, maybe people will think I'm a bit crazy. I think the UK are saying that not to keep people, well, to keep people away, number one, or what they're doing is they also working with insurance companies. So if anybody does travel and they get ill, then they've got an excuse not to pay out. Yeah. But the reality is this, Melton. If you arrive in the UK today, yeah, they're going to ask you for your telephone number. Okay. Now, that is how they're going to track you, is through a telephone number. Now, if you don't have Bluetooth or your Bluetooth's turned off, or if you don't use the internet, they can't see where you are. You can be playing golf, or at the beach or in the supermarket or shopping in Oxford Street, and they won't know, because
Yeah.
all the system is doing is recording a phone number and relying on you to actually be honest and not go out and just stay in a hotel for 14 days. But you and I both know that people won't do that. So already we've had the owner or head of Ryanair, the Irish guy who does a lot of business in the UK. We are one of the main hubs for the airline. He's called the government 14-day quarantine rubbish. He says that anybody can come in, and it doesn't really mean that they're going to have to stay in their house or in a hotel for 14 days, because the system that the government's design is based on a telephone number.
Hmm.
So if you have an old style flip phone, they can't track you. So yes, it may be a polite way of saying don't come, but at the same time, if somebody does want to come and they do want to break the rules, there's nothing anybody can do. So I personally believe that this is something the government felt that they want to open up. They want to prove to the rest of the world that they open for business. But the fact is that they have to cover themselves with all the insurance companies in case somebody lands up in hospital, gets ill, needs repatriation to their country, and then they can say, well, you know, you weren't self-isolating. The other thing is that you arrive at Heathrow Airport, you give your phone number, and then you need to get to a hotel. What are you going to do? Are you going to go in a taxi? Are you going to go on the underground with everybody else that's going up and down? So it's not been thought through very well by the government.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So thank you for the answer. So what do you think about, let's talk about the general, the event and meetings in our industry. What can be the new expectations, priorities for our business?
Well, let's first of all look at demand and supply economics. So demand over the next year or 2 years is going to be much weaker than it was before. So if you look at the demand for a particular product that might have cost 200 euros a year ago, and it'll cost 200 euros in October, there's going to be less demand for that product because most businesses are having problems. Most private people are having problems with income, with jobs. All this recession is going to hit us hard, and it's going to take a year or two to recover. So there's going to have to be probably 2 different price points, a live attendee and a virtual attendee, which means we're talking about hybrid events.
Yes.
I teach at a university, and what we're planning for, if you think about it, a lecture or a series of lectures is like a series of live events.
Yes.
It's the same kind of thing. And we are actually looking at hybrid because we have students all around Europe, China, US, and they may not want to spend money to fly to UK and only be looking for virtual delivery because we can't deliver everything live.
Yes.
And this comes down to the point, if you had maybe 100 people in a particular venue before, you'll probably find that you can only have 20% of that now, of that space to be used for live, which means what do? As an organizer, do you hire 5 venues or 5 rooms in a venue for 100 people and then put 20 in each? Or do you go for a larger venue to fit 100, which is going to be over your budget? So there's so many different elements to consider. So what the first thing is I think a hybrid event with some live and some virtual delivery. And the virtual can be in real time like this and then recorded later for people to watch. It's also going to depend on the budgets, because just remember, a lot of companies may be very, very short of money, and they're going to have to cut budgets down on the kinds of events they do. Because even if the events are free, Melton, if it's a corporate promotion or a training event, even if it's free, the companies that they're inviting may not have the money to attend live. They may have a policy that says we can't let our employees go to this country or this city because we're worried about the virus. So it comes back to this idea of a hybrid event. Those who can attend and afford to attend live will do it, and those that can't will access that event at maybe a cheaper price in the virtual medium platform. So these are just my predictions. We've never tried or tested this before. We have no idea. We do know that virtual events, we've been doing it for quite a long time now, for more than 10 years. If you look at Cisco's WebEx platform, one of the first, it's been there for 12 years. You know, people have been doing conferencing. We also know there's other technologies out there. Do you remember the telepresence machine from about 6 years ago? Was the screen on wheels that used to go around the exhibition hall, so you could attend an exhibition from somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've been playing with these ideas, but the industry's had to literally transform overnight to using all these technologies.
Yes.
And in those days, we never talked about how do I give quality engagement at a virtual event, or how do I design a virtual event? You know, 3 years ago, we were just saying, there's a virtual event platform, use it. But now we're having these in-depth conversations about how do we design a more engaging virtual event? How do we build in different elements? So, for example, if you were doing a Zoom meeting for 100, you can send them a Deliveroo or an Uber Eats or Just Eat voucher for lunch, so they order it in and they get it at their desk and have lunch with everybody. You know, so, you know, using different maybe tangible things, posting out stuff for them to do online together for the event itself, so that you're not just using the sound and the sight sensors, you can use taste, touch, smell as well,
Yes.
and making that event more interesting. So we're seeing things happening in that area as well in terms of design. You know, you could be doing a virtual wedding and you could send out little wedding cupcakes to people. I don't know. You know, so there's, you know, little wedding cakes, or you can send them a song sheet so everybody sings to the bride at the same time. You know, there's lots of different ways of doing this. But we never had those conversations before, but now we're having them.
Yes, yes, unfortunately. What about the festivals and concerts? You know, for you know that I'm a fan of, you know, international music festivals, for instance. We have always, in each June, we used to have Istanbul Festival here with lots of international musicians playing beautiful, you know, concerts. What's gonna happen to those, you know, concerts, festivals?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of examples where they had an orchestra online, and they had people in their own homes playing their instruments together, and then everybody could hear what they were doing. I've seen another example from Amsterdam, a music festival in a hotel, where they've taken a large hotel and then you book a room and you stay in your room and they stream the music into the rooms. But I think that this is probably, you know, the 200 or 2,000 people in front of the stage, shoulder to shoulder, really close. Nobody's figured that out yet. You know, I haven't seen anybody come up with any ideas. The closest that I've seen, well, you know, some of the technology using the social distancing bracelets, so that people have to stay a meter apart, could be something that could be used. But you're not going to be able to recreate that atmosphere of live. I think what we have to consider here is, do we as event planners and event designers, do we try and recreate the live to virtual, or do we think a whole new way of using virtual to offer an entirely new experience? So it's not based on the live. So think about a conference, for example. It's an easy example. So you come at 9, you have 10 sessions of 30 minutes each, a lunch in between, coffee breaks, yeah? What we're seeing now is, instead of people doing a whole day online, we're seeing a 5-day event where they just do an hour each day with 2 sessions per hour. And that is a lot easier for people, because if they're working from home or their office, then they can take 1 hour out maybe at lunchtime and attend that conference. So it's looking at it in a very different kind of way than the classic, okay, the wedding starts at the service, the religious service is at 10, and then tea is at 11, and then the feast is at 12. It might be a completely different way of doing it. So I think as event designers, we need to try and rethink virtual in a new way, and not just try and take the old model and adapt it to virtual. We need to kind of come up with ideas. This is now virtual. What would we do? And I think that's a very interesting a way of us being innovators, of us developing a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things, a new way of engaging with people. It's an opportunity rather than something negative. It's something I think is very, very positive.
I think we have to find new methods. Methods.
It's new ways of designing, new ways of engaging, and making people. So, for example, a bride and groom could travel to Turkey, and they can have a camera crew with them, and they can go through their wedding experience or their honeymoon experience, and they could have maybe a video of the service, a small service with immediate family, and they could do it maybe over the space of a week, where they just do it in the evenings or something like that. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I'm just throwing examples out there. Because I think it's an opportunity for us to be creative, and we are a creative industry, aren't we?
Yes, I think we will find the methods, but everything has happened, so everything is so new. It's been just 3 months, I guess.
Yeah.
And I have been doing a lot of live shows here, and in my own account I've been attending many webinars about what's going. Nobody knows. Everybody is trying to find out a new method of doing our business. But we'll find a way. We'll see.
I've seen some clever ways of monetizing content at conferences. Is paying for the whole conference, or paying for particular sessions that you want to go to, and then people can do that live or by the video, for example. So not everything has to be for free. Money can still be made, which means that you can improve the budget. I've seen some AV companies providing a mini studio that would come into your office, and then within that studio you've got a camera, you've got a backdrop, you've got some lights, so you can almost do like a professional kind of broadcast kind of idea as well, to make it more interesting and more professional. So people are coming up with lots of different ideas at the moment.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So how do you see the future of live events? Will they exist?
Oh yes, of course.
Oh,
You know, the
thank
thing
God.
is, yeah. I
I'm
mean,
happy to hear
you and
that.
I, Meltem, are itching to go back to live, aren't we?
Yeah.
I bet you got really excited going to the hotels yesterday,
Yeah,
today.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because there's nothing better than human connection. And, you know, whilst we have these restrictions right now, people want that human connection. They want that unpredictability of meeting somebody that they would learn something new from, or be able to pass information, or just to smile at somebody and have a conversation. You know, we all miss that. And there's nothing about live there's nothing about live that's going away, the advantages of live going away. Virtual will never take over. All virtual will do is it will allow greater access to that knowledge or to that experience um, in a different kind of way. So instead of trying to recreate the live into the virtual, we have to think about, when we're designing, this is the live product and this is the virtual product.
Yes.
And the two are very different experiences, but with some similarities. Yeah. For example, you'll have the same speaker, or you'll have the same religious service for a wedding. Yeah. But we will be having two different types of events that we as designers can roll up into one. So us as event designers are going to have to be offering clients a package of, this is the live event and this is the virtual event. And
Yes.
these are how this will work together. But I don't know if clients are going to be able to pay for that in the next year or two until their
Yes.
business is back on their feet. So what we will see is we'll see them looking for cheap alternatives, maybe not doing as many events before, doing smaller events. Unfortunately, that's what happens with any recession. You know that very well in Turkey. Remember the recession in 2008, the global recession. You know,
Yes.
so that took us 3 or 4 years to come out of that.
You're right.
Luckily, this is not a financial recession, it's a health recession. So I think demand will pick up a lot quicker, but probably we're going to see some businesses not existing in the same format in 6 to 12 months' time, maybe mergers of businesses. Um, as a as a small business, you're probably better placed um, because you don't have very large overheads. So you imagine if you're a business of maybe 100 people and you've got a big office in central Istanbul and you're paying rent and you've got no money coming in, you've got the wage, the salaries, you've got the rental, you've got the
Horrible.
electricity, you've got all those overheads and you've got no money coming in. What do? You know, so you can pivot to virtual events for your clients, but then they're going to be going, well, why am I paying the same amount for the virtual event that I'm paying for a live event? There's no venue cost, there's no catering cost, so the AV costs are less. So there's a big discussion to have with the clients as well, and what their hopes are going to be in the future too.
Oh,
So it's quite hard to predict because there's so many different elements to consider.
you're right. You're right. And do you have any idea what will be the percentage of digital events taking the place of live events in the future? Half and half, or?
Um, that's quite a hard one, Melton. I mean, even my crystal ball's gone foggy and I can't answer that.
Yeah, every month, each month, everything changes, you know.
Well, that's the thing. Look, I think people will want to go back to live, but it's going to depend on the costs, the entry costs, the travel
You're
costs,
right.
um, the cost of being out of the office. Um, a lot of businesses um, have had to cut down their production. If they have factories, say a bed making factory, they haven't been making beds for the last. So there will be some demand for beds, but they haven't made them yet. So we have to get back to productivity. And once the productivity happens, then we start to see the economy coming back. more people getting hired, more people spending money, but it's going to be a slow process. So predicting what will be live and what will be virtual is virtually impossible to predict, because there's so many different economic elements to to consider. What each company wants to do, or even in the case of a wedding or a festival, can people spend 400 euros on a flight to Istanbul? Can they stay for a week in a hotel? Then they have to buy the wedding gift.
You're right.
There's a lot of unknowns there.
You're right.
Yeah?
You're right.
So there's always known unknowns. So will people spend on a flight, because we know people need to get there? But then there's also unknown unknowns of things we haven't thought of before. So that still has to come out. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. So what do you think about the new technologies in the global event industry that will trend in post-COVID-19?
So
will there be new trends?
We're seeing the major trend that we're seeing is smaller event technology companies are incorporating established platforms into their offering. So, for example, Network Tables is a Dutch company that did seating plans and one-to-one conversations, and they've basically taken Zoom and incorporated Zoom into their platform so that they can do virtual meetings. There's another company called Eventsair. It's quite a well-known international company. They do registration, event management software, etc. And they've used Zoom for network meetings virtually. They've used Vimeo as a webinar platform. So a lot of these technologies that have been established for a while are now being repackaged by smaller companies to facilitate virtual events and webinars. So I think we have to be very careful with the smaller companies, because if we see a greater uptake, especially when the schools go back, or we see the universities go back and they're going more online, we could see some platforms not have enough capacity. So, for example, if you build Zoom into your smaller platform, and then all of a sudden Zoom explodes with users, you might have a problem with your clients coming to your platform. So these repackaged products have to be very careful about, the actual main product that they're using, and does the main product actually have the facilities to increase the users globally, for example, because if everybody's on Zoom, it could crash the platform at any one time. The other thing that you have to think about, especially in regards to China, for example, is a lot of these platforms don't work because of the what you call the Chinese wall, we call it in the technology industry. So, for example, you can't get Facebook in China, you can't get Twitter, you can't get Instagram.
Yes.
You can get LinkedIn. But if you were doing your event on Facebook and you wanted to engage with Chinese people, you can't do that. Yeah. So Zoom, for example, is not available in China. So there are these particular things that also make a difference as well. If you're trying to do an international event, Chinese people can actually attend live, but they may not be able to sign up to a virtual event. So it's interesting. LinkedIn are developing their own events platform. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that in the next few months.
Yes.
Because they already have the live streaming ability in LinkedIn for LinkedIn Live. And so that can be probably the most international business meeting webinar format that will reach anywhere. We also talking about, if you think about it globally, you know, if you're in Central America, in a country like Honduras, for example, the bandwidth of to actually get what we're getting now in our world, you know, in Turkey and UK, we have very good bandwidth and good internet connections.
Yes.
But you know, you go to smaller countries, they may not have very good bandwidth, so they may not be able to take part or participate, etc. You think about a small village in Scotland or a small village in northern Turkey. You know, what is their internet connection like?
Yes.
So, you know, we can have those connectivity problems with the technology as well.
I see. That's right. So how would you like the global event industry to look like in the future?
Well, I'd like to, this is for me, I'd like to see a much more sustainable event industry. And if we can make money in the industry by having both virtual and live attendees, so there's less aeroplanes flying around with people, less waste, less paper, all those kind of, that's my particular passion is for more sustainability in the events industry. People are talking, the World Tourism Organization have been working on a project for years about limiting or calculating air miles and how that might work in the future. About you as a business traveler, how many air miles are you allowed each year for your business? And if you go over, you start paying, and that goes to planting more trees, for example.
Yes.
So there's lots of kind of ideas out there to make it more sustainable, but that's what I would like to see. So I don't have a problem with attending an event virtually, but I also want to have the live experience as well. So I think it's about reaching a good balance, and I think that's what we're going to see in the future, is a balance between virtual and live, probably 80-20, 80% live, 20% virtual.
That's a good ratio.
It's the usual.
I'm happy to hear that from you.
That's the usual ratio.
Yeah. You know, we have been talking about 55 minutes.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And I have so many questions still to ask you. Let me ask my last question. I think we have to create a positive perception in communication strategies, collaborating with event agencies, vendors, social stakeholders. Do you have an idea how can we create this?
The communication strategy, if you're talking about people coming back to a live event.
Yes.
Well, you gave a great example earlier. It's about reassuring the attendee that their safety is your first priority.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think what we need is we probably need a maybe a 10-point communication that's very easy to read, and maybe with some symbols on it about stay 2 meters apart, wash your hands, don't push around, travel safely, you know, all those kind of things. Just like they're doing in Germany today with the Back to Live event, is they trying to show people how they can be more aware and make sure that their attendees know it. There's an interesting document that your viewers can have a look at. There's a company in the US called PSAV, and PSAV is an international audiovisual company, and they have a document. I'm just going to look it up because I downloaded it today. It's for mice planners, and the document is called, hold on, it's called Meet Safe.
Meet Safe.
Meet Safe, MEETSAFE.
Yeah, very good. Yes.
So if you do a Google search for PSAV Meet Safe, and then you can actually download the document, and it talks about it's more about meetings.
Very good.
In terms of exhibitions, if you go to UFI website, UFI, it's the European Federation for the exhibitions industry. They also have a document about safety protocols for exhibitions.
Very good. Thank you. So useful know-how.
Yeah, but what you can do is you can look at those, and then you can literally take their ideas and say, okay, this is what we want our attendees to do to be safe, and this is what we are doing to be safe. So you have, this is what we're doing to make you safe, this is what you need to do to make you safe. And that's probably the best way to communicate it from the organizer angle and the attendee angle.
Very good. Well,
Okay.
Dr. James Morgan, thank you so much. It was a lovely talk, and I have so many more questions. Maybe we will do another session with you again.
Okay, Melton.
In several
And it's good to see you after such a long time.
Yeah. I hope we'll meet lively again.
Well, I'm hoping to come on holiday in Turkey, so maybe I'll pass through Istanbul.
Yeah, please let me know before you come. Let's arrange some time to spend together.
Okay, then.
Thank you so much for all those informations. It was so useful. Thank you so much, and see you very soon, hopefully. Bye bye, dear. Bye bye. Dur şimdi sallandı.